Do you want your world to be blown away? Then stay with me. Well, hi guys and welcome back to my channel. Today we are having a Class D amplifier called Sabaj A10a. I'm not sure about Sabaj actually, maybe it's Sabaj. Or in my country we would just read it Sabaj. Yeah, but nobody else would read it that way. Okay, so anyways, it's a A10a model. It's a really small thing, but it is an integrated amplifier. Now I want your full attention here for a moment. It's not a DAC, it's not a headphone amplifier, it's an integrated amplifier that can drive speakers, like big speakers, passive ones. You see, I'm not lying, it has 4 speaker binding posts. Aside from that, it has power connector with a switch, nice, and only one set of inputs. It's analog, RCA, single-ended input. This third little thing here is subwoofer output. That's it. It's a small integrated amp with one analog input, no digital ones, meaning no DAC on board, and a set of speaker outputs and the subwoofer out, which is a nice touch, I suppose. In the front, let me hook it up quickly, you see a small display and a knob. And as you can see, yeah, you can control the volume, you see numbers changing. There is also a remote control. And aside from controlling the volume, you can adjust bass and treble response and even use some EQ settings. I'll get to that a little bit later. But now let's get to the part, how does it really sound? Because this is a really small Class D amp costing $140. That's right, $140 US. It uses Infineon Class D modules of I think 40 watts into 8 ohms, and then I suppose it doubles into 80 watts at 4 ohms or something like that. I'll put that on the screen. I cannot remember everything. I'm not a robot, guys. But to be perfectly honest, I film these videos utterly unprepared. I just think about sonics and that's all. I sometimes forget the name of the model I'm talking about. Okay, whew, that felt good to get that out of my chest. So, to be perfectly straight here, I lied to you. This is not an amp that will blow your mind. This is not an amp that will disrupt the market. It's just a really good amp. But I had to lie to you guys, because I don't know what is it about people today. You want everything to be the next greatest thing, or you want click. But you should still keep watching this video because I have interesting things to say and big old brands to annoy and toes to step on. Okay, now really, how does it sound? Well, it sounds warm and lush and full. Yeah, it's a really small Class D amp and you have every right to expect it to sound thin and analytical and I don't know, digital, something like that, but it doesn't. It sounds exactly the opposite. One morning, I remembered, oh yeah, I have this amp and I need to test it. I hooked it up into my main system. It just replaced my Hegel H90. And I was thinking like, yeah, this will probably not work because I have LS50s. These are 85 decibels, quite low in sensitivity. They're demanding on amp. And I was thinking, yeah, this is going to be a disaster. And then I'm going to have to find some other less demanding speakers. But I put a cup of coffee. I started my daily discovery on a Tidal. That's like my morning routine. And I started listening to songs. First one was something really nice with full vocal and string instruments and so on. And I was like, whoa, I like this song. Let's put it in my favorites. And I kept listening, and after a few songs I would be again like, oh, I like this song too, this is really nice song, it's a beautiful vocal or something like that, oh, let's put that into my favorites too. And at that moment I realized, wow, I actually kept listening through that daily discovery list without thinking too much about the amp and testing and everything, because everything sounded good. Yes, I did realize that soundstage was more congested, narrower, and not as deep as with Hegel amp. It's also not as dynamic, but nothing was really poking me and annoying me, because first thing, mid-range is really full and natural sounding. And it's informative too. I would listen to vocals that I like and I know, and they sounded natural and full and present, but not covered. No, there was a lot of texture. If there is a huskiness in a vocal, you'll hear it nice and husky, but full, and just pleasant, listenable. Then I noticed that the bass line is also in a similar fashion. It's warm, it has a reasonable amount of texture and information, but it's not really deep. If you're expecting some plodding bass and some kick, you're not really going to get that here. It's nice, it's warm, it's full sounding, but it's not really deep and it's not really punchy. But to be perfectly honest, almost no amp at this price point is going to give you that. And, oh yeah, highest spectrum. Perfectly nice, fine and refined. Again, enough of details. It's not as highly extended. You don't hear that last bit of air and space around the instruments, but it provides enough of information in a smooth and slightly rolled off fashion. And this actually leads me to pairing. So I was thinking, it can drive CAF LS50s really decently. So you'll probably okay no matter what speakers you possess. If it's not something like insanely insensitive, you're okay. And for basically any speaker that will be realistically paired with this amp, you're okay. You have enough power, you have enough drive. You should think more about tonality and matching that with your speakers or the speakers that you intend to buy with this amp. For example, first thing that came to my mind is Monitor Audio Bronze series of speakers. Now these are revealing speakers with really clean and crisp sound. They do lean slightly toward higher spectrum. They sound a little bit lean, just a touch on analytical side of things. So pairing those with this amp would be a good move in my opinion. You have this quick, speedy, nimble, clean, crisp sounding speaker, and then you pair it with an amp that actually has lush but informative mid-range and mid-bass and bass, and you would get something pretty good. Pretty neutral and natural sounding also. But on the other side of the spectrum, I thought about Wharfedale Diamonds, for example. These are warm and lush and mid-range centric sounding speakers to boot. And pairing those with this amp would maybe result in too much of that mid-bass warmth and that mid-range warmth. And some of you still might really like that, especially if you're all into like vocals and late night, slow jazz, smooth jazz, things like that. You might be like, oh, this is heaven. But in terms of tonal correctness, that would be warm, lush, and like shushed sound. And if you have that pairing and you want something that needs to bite, I don't know, like rock and roll, AC/DC, or electronic music, Daft Punk, and you need that kick, that bite, a little bit of edge to the sound, that pairing would not really provide it. So to finish this part of the video, I think this amp works great with neutral speakers and also with slightly leaner sounding speakers. But personally, I would not pair it with warm sounding ones. It's just my opinion. Again, you might still like that. And finally, a few comparisons. And the first one that came to my mind is NAD D3020 V2 that I reviewed some time ago. It's a $400 amp. It's also a Class D. It comes from NAD. It's like very well-known manufacturer. Well, this amp and that NAD sonically are almost the same. It's that same warm and lush sound signature, but with plenty of texture and information, especially in the mid-range. Of course, other things are different, connectivity and form factor and some features are different. I will not get into that, don't be lazy, Google it. You can find tech specs. I'm talking about things that you cannot find on a manufacturer's website. I'm talking about things that you cannot see just by looking at the images. So sonically, that NAD and this Sabaj, they sound like twin brothers. So that looks pretty good for this little amp. Another comparison would be something that I reviewed just recently, and it's SMSL SA300. It even has a similar form factor to this one. It's a little bit different. It has Bluetooth and I'm not sure about other digital inputs, but again, please Google that. That's something that you can actually find, as well as check current prices and deals on both of these. But when it comes to sonics, they are so close. I suppose it's not that unexpected because these two amps actually use the exact same Infineon modules. They have similar construction, etc., etc. Almost you don't need to worry about sonics, just choose whichever you like more. Oh, and just before I finish, I forgot to mention EQ settings. You have several of them, just choose which one you prefer and you like. In my opinion, the best one, the most correct, detailed sounding one is actually direct mode, without any EQ whatsoever. And I kept listening and testing this unit that way. But if you want to play a little bit, you can. For example, I found out one setting was interesting. It was called dynamic, I think. And it would make everything sound just like pum pum pum. Gruntier and more punchy. You would lose some detail and some finest texture from the tone, but you do get a lot of that punchiness and excitement. And I suppose that's a good setting, for example, if you have your non-audiophile friend visiting over, playing some annoying music that needs to sound punchy and alive, and you want to impress that guy for whatever reason. And he asks you like, oh, this is a really small amp, can it really go loud and sound dynamic? And then you just put that mode and you're like, here you go, plebs. And after he leaves, you're like, oh, now I'm switching back to the direct mode and listening to all these nice audiophile textures and things. These normals just, they don't get it, man. No. And with that, it's time to end this video. So my conclusion is, this is a really great small amp. Is it the next best thing in a hi-fi world? No, it's not. Does it sound great? Yes, it does. Can it fully match a $400 amp of a more famous brand such as NAD? Yes, it can, and yes, it does. Sorry, NAD lovers, it just does. Can you buy similarly sounding products from another not so famous companies? Yes, you also can. How should you choose among these companies? And I don't know, it's your problem, man. Just look at photos, see which amp is cuter to you, it looks nicer, cooler, I don't know. I think Sabaj A10a looks pretty cool. And if you decide to buy this one, use my links below the video, man. Use my links. Not any other reviewer's link. My links. Use my links. And that would be all for today, guys. Now, if you liked this video, if you found it interesting, then click that button, share it with your friends, subscribe, make this channel big, and consider becoming a patron. That would really, really help. Thank you for watching, guys, and see you next time. Bye. you.